that week, which was the one sponsored by the Independent. The Aviation Brigade, first of all, is about 2,000 troops and 100 or so helicopters and other support people. That it would involve some civilian employees. It would involve a lot of construction. They'd have to build a new hangar to handle that many and other facilities. So, but what happened then on Friday after that Wednesday was that the subject came up, and General Pascarat, who's a one-star general out there, kind of tried to tamp down that expectation, didn't deny it, but tried to emphasize that the decision wasn't absolutely final, which we already knew that it wasn't final, but it sounded like it was stirring. And and this thing has been out there for 2 or 3 years in terms of a general, might happen, could happen, might be Fort Carson. This sort of focused the time frame much closer, could be about to happen. So, in doing a lot of research, calling people in the Pentagon, calling people in both of the senators' offices here, calling a couple of press people who've been nosing around on this, it was pretty clear to me that this decision was quite imminent, meaning probably the only way it's going to be stopped is if Gates does it, thinking it's wasteful. But otherwise, that in the course of things, in a month or 2 or 3, or maybe even next week, there will be an announcement about this. And one of the things that came, the pushback I got from the press was that, and also from one of the city councilmen, we called a whole bunch of them as part of our action from last time. Got a variety of answers, but a couple of them said, Fort Carson lost this brigade. It's going to Fort Lewis. And when I dug further into that, actually there are 2 brigades, and Senator Udall's office assured me that the announcement about the brigades would happen at the same time. And even though one was going to be stood up in 2012, the other, which Fort Carson is highly likely to get, would be stood up in 2013. And so that was kind of a little attempt to throw us off the track. It felt like to me that by saying that Fort Lewis was getting this first of the 2 brigades, that the other one didn't exist or wouldn't. So that's kind of been my working assumption, that that announcement would happen in one and the same release. For those of us a little on the skeptical side of things, I'm sure it'll be delivered as pork in your sandwich, as, this is good for Fort Carson and good for the city of Colorado Springs, and basically across the board without much feedback about what the downside might be. What we decided to do, and many of us have done some work on this, is to find out, fill in the big picture. I have biases about this. I think in general the Pentagon budget is way too big. That influence of the military in this town is way too much. And that some of the downside is pretty easily observable. You can find it out by looking at the money the city government doesn't have, at the long-term effect of particular tax arrangements that come with military personnel, that come with such a large demographic of people in their late teens and 20s, and what special needs, people coming back from war zones, etc. So as anecdotally you can kind of see that. So the question is how to dig into the details of that, and not just talk off the top of your head. Now, one of the things I've done in the past week is critique this Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments 40-page 400? I don't know. It's a big, long study. That they came out with and said Fort Carson adds $1.7 billion annually to the local economy. It's great. And that's about all it said. if you look into the report, they have a lot of details in there that they don't really comment on. They even have some of this tax information in there that they estimate. I don't know where they base this estimation, but they say that about 11% of the sales tax that Fort Carson people should pay, they don't because of commissary PX receipts that, you know, are tax exempt. They also go into another area where there could be a revenue shortfall. They talk about if you are a soldier who buys or registers a car, you have a choice of doing that in another state, in your home state, for example. If if that's still where your legal residence is. And you also have that same option when it comes to paying state income tax. You, as somebody from New Hampshire or New York or something, you could pay it here, but you could pay it there. Probably you'd make that choice on which is a better deal on both of those. And they have a graph in there, which they don't comment on it really at all. They said, we can't tell how many people take advantage of this. And I'm not sure that is true. I think they could dig and find that out. They said, based on how many it might be, there is a basic revenue short for, if everybody took advantage of this, it would cost, their tax receipts would go down to $22 million. If no one did, it would be 45. So they leave a $20-some million window there saying, we don't know what it is. I guess you'd tend to want to cut it in half. But I don't think you should do that. I think you should find the actual hard numbers of how much revenue is then lost to the local, state, and city budgets from that tax stuff. And on the other side in that report, there's a lot of stuff that many of us heard at earlier town halls about overuse and stress on local service providers in the social services area. Health, mental health counseling, family counseling, and they have that in there. They have things in there talking about what percentage might be caused by, or in fact, how many clients. They have a headline at the top of one of the pages saying these groups all need to get more funding. They need to get more grants. And it's almost like that's their problem. We didn't cause this. They just need to get more grants and do a better job at this, etc. They have a lot of information in there about this thing, about how much money Fort Carson brings into the local economy, how much the military in general does. I don't know if that's in there, but it's certainly in Ben's letter to the editor that was in today's Gazette. The other thing, backing up just a little bit on this, when they did an environmental impact study more than 2 years ago about the new brigade that might be sent here that ended up not, they also did an EIS on the Aviation Brigade tacked on to that other analysis. And it's very, very sketchy. In fact, in the noise area, they just say they didn't look into that. That since the flight pattern of these helicopters is going to stay the same, the number won't necessarily make any difference as to how much noise at a given time you'll hear. They say, well, you're going to hear it more often, but it won't be louder, basically, to summarize their findings. And in other areas, they have similar things that are just that general and sketchy, and not breaking down actually how many hours do these fly, how much of that is live fire training, how much of that's going to happen at Pinyon Canyon, which is one of my real worries, is that this will reopen the push for expansion of the maneuver site.